What's up, everybody? Trip Morgan here with Panthersource.com. Thursday Night Football Edition. Going to preview the Week 9 matchup. Big divisional game for the Panthers this week in Charlotte, taking on the Atlanta Falcons. And I've got my friend Stephen Igoe from 24/7 Sports, who covers the Panthers. Big contributor, has all the news and updates surrounding the Panthers. Stephen, what's up, buddy?
What's going on, Trip? Glad to join the show for the first time, man. Excited about it.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks for coming on. I'm glad I caught you on a good night. I know you're wide open all the time, so it's always good.
Yeah, try my best, man.
Yeah. So I think the obvious thing we have to start with here is the shocking trade that went down on Halloween of all days, on the deadline. I haven't actually got a chance. We normally talk about these kind of things. I actually haven't got a chance to see your side of things. I did read your article on it. Obviously it was a shock to everyone, whether you agree with the trade or not. It was out of left field. Nobody saw it really coming. You couldn't really predict that kind of trade. What are your thoughts on it, and how do you think it impacts right now going into Sunday's game versus the Falcons?
I think it's, I'm always the type of guy where I like to evaluate things from both sides. A lot of people like to take one hard stance, especially when it comes to sports takes. With a lot of media members, there's almost no in between. But, on one hand, the initial shock was, hey, this doesn't seem to make much sense. You're not, when I first saw they were trading him, you kind of hope that, okay, you're giving away an important piece of your offense. Hopefully you get something back for this season. That's my biggest letdown maybe with this trade is, you're a contender right now. You're giving away a big piece of your offense, and you're not getting anything back for this season. So what does that kind of say to the team? But, at the same time, it's clear that they believe, getting rid of Benjamin, as crazy as it might sound, almost helps open up the offense more because they can get more guys on the field, get more speed on the field, back the DBs off. But, it sounds good in theory, but at the same time, what have Curtis Samuel and Kalen Clay really done to say, hey, if they go out there, our DB is really going to respect them from the get-go. They're going to have to go out there and prove it. So it makes sense on paper, but, a Curtis Samuel and a Kalen Clay is not a Ted Ginn Jr. right now, and you're still missing Greg Olsen for the next couple of games at the least. So there's still more questions than answers, in my opinion. It's a bold move. If it pays off for Marty Hurney, I think he earns himself a contract extension. If not, I think there's a very good chance he gets fired because of it. So we'll have to see how it plays out, but it's an interesting move for sure.
Yeah, and I like the point you brought up about Marty Hurney. I went, when all this went down, I got up here and went live and talked to a bunch of fans about this situation. And as you expected, and as I'm sure you saw, there was a lot of infuriated people with this trade. And I don't know if you've probably seen some of my stuff on Twitter. You may or may not have anyway, or on Facebook for that matter. But I am not necessarily against the trade. I've said the value of the picks that we got in return could be argued. That could be debatable. But I have said it for a couple weeks now that it's just when the defenses can stack the box and put 8 and 9 men and no safeties over top, and your receivers can't get separation, and you're throwing a deep ball and nothing's happening, even with 6'5" guys. And I'm on record saying Kelvin Benjamin plays small for his size. I always pull for the guy, and he has great games, but his inconsistencies have been my biggest issue. And, we've talked about stretching the field. We need to, like you said, in theory, it sounds great. And that's really, we keep going back to 2015, and it's not really a fair, analogy, I guess. But you go back then, Kelvin Benjamin goes down, and everybody's freaking out. It's like, what is this offense going to do now? And it explodes. It didn't start the season that way, but it finished it. And I think that had a large part to do with it. Granted, the offensive line was much better, and we had Ted Ginn. And in the offseason, people made jokes about us losing Ted Ginn, but it was a huge piece of the offense. And it showed in 2014, after he left in 2013, we got Jason Avant and Bill Voth and, Max Henson from Panthers.com actually hit on this, and I had completely forgot about the Avant thing. But they hit on this and brought it up in 2014 when the Panthers were about, the NFC South was in shambles at this point. and they were still in the race, and they released Avant out of nowhere, and it wasn't Kelvin Benjamin, so it wasn't as big of a deal, but it was kind of like, what in the world are they doing? And they brought undrafted free agent Philly Brown in, and the offense exploded again, and it got to the playoffs, and ultimately ended up losing in the divisional round after defeating the Cardinals with no quarterback. So it's like you said, in theory it sounds good. I, for one, am a big fan of Curtis Samuel. I think he can be a big playmaker. You're absolutely right in saying, what has he really done recently? But at the same time, he hasn't gotten a whole lot of opportunities. I know he dropped the fumble, and I hated that. But you can't. I mean, you know, of all people, you know, you can't down one guy after one play, especially his rookie season. But it certainly puts pressure on them moving forward too, and that kind of has me a little worried. I can't sit here and say I expect this Panthers offense to blow up. And I'm not saying that at all, and I'm definitely not saying it's going to happen this week. I mean, we can't really expect that if it does, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because, you know, Ron Rivera just said last week, you know, we have to take some of the responsibility and pressure off Curtis Samuel's shoulders, and now they're going to ask him clearly to do a lot more. I know he made the point earlier this week that now at least his role will be defined, and he won't have to be playing a bunch of different positions,
right,
so to speak. But, you know, you're talking about a guy with 7 catches and through half the season. A lot of pressure is going to be on his shoulders. I think Russell Shepard's kind of up to the task for sure. We know what he can do to an extent. I don't think he's going to be a game breaker like a Curtis Samuel, but yeah, I mean, there's just so many variables in play. I mean, it just so much has to play out. I think it'll make a big difference once Greg Olsen comes back, and that'll open up the field even more because that safety now that, you know, potentially has to cover over the top of Curtis Samuel on the outside, he's also got to cover the seam if Greg Olsen is working the middle of the field. So that opens up a whole different dimension. And then the other variable that I almost worry about more than just the impact of losing a guy like Benjamin physically is, you know, how does Cam Newton react, you know, specifically if they go out there offensively and struggle the next, you know, 2 games heading into a bye, and you just traded one of his best friends. You know, Cam Newton's a very emotional guy, and if they go out there and don't have success on Sunday, he might not admit it to the media, but you have to believe he at least will second guess a little bit what's going on with the front office and everything. So there are so many factors in play, and that's what makes it interesting to cover, at least, and interesting to be a Panthers fan if you're a Panthers fan, is to see what happens. And I think that's what makes this game so critical. I mean, if you go out and lose, the Benjamin trade almost becomes even more of a story. If you win, I think you can kind of put it behind you.
Yeah, and that's a great point, because it's like you said, you know, there's a lot of fans, despite being 5-3, which is really remarkable when you think about the Panthers' offense and how it's played this season, and the defense really isn't getting enough credit just because of how bad the offensive run game has been, which is what the Panthers are always built around. And that's a great point. If they come out of this, if they go in at home and lose another game, whether it's close or if it's blown out, at that point I think you're right. It's sitting here saying it's fueling the fire for people saying, see, you shouldn't have traded Benjamin. You shouldn't have traded Benjamin. And in reality, I don't think Benjamin's won us or lost us a game really this season. So I don't think that's necessarily fair, but I mean that's just the reality of the situation. That's exactly what's going to go down. If the Panthers win, everybody can say, okay, well maybe they made the right decision. If they lose, they can say, oh well, if we had Kelvin Benjamin, who knows what would have happened. So, you know, it's like you said, it's all theoretical until Sunday gets here. We really won't know what we have, and I don't think we're going to know what we really have until Greg Olsen gets back, because you know his specialty is tearing open the seam in the middle of the field. So Ed Dixon has been decent, but he's not Greg Olsen. So
yeah, exactly, and I mean that's why it's so interesting that, you know, of course this move had to happen because the trade deadline was here. But you know, at the same time, it's heading into such a big game because this is the middle of the season. You're facing the division champs, the defending NFC champions, and it's just it is as crucial of a game as there can be. I mean, if you lose, it's just can kind of take the wind out of your sails. So I'm interested to see how the team responds. I think it helps they're playing at home against such a good team, but obviously the fans will be behind them. I think getting off to a fast start in this game is crucial. But I do like Ron Rivera's mindset. In today's press conference, kind of saying, "All right, guys, let's kind of remind people that we are playing Atlanta this week. I know the media has a job to do, but at the same time, let's start to focus on Atlanta, at least as best as he can make the media do that." So, just interested to see how they respond this Sunday, because they can say all the right things, but I know it was a shock to a lot of players, and it should be interesting.
Yeah, that's the thing with players, coaches, and media. They're going to tell you what they're going to say all the right things, and saying the right things and putting the product on the field are two completely different stories. So, well, I'm gonna rip a page out of your book since I have you, and we're gonna play a little bit of who has the edge in this game from position spots. And I've tried to come up with my own little segment before we started here, but the edge just fits perfect. So I'm just gonna roll with that since I have you. And since we're talking about receivers, let's start there, and I'll answer first. I think it's pretty obvious, in my opinion, the Falcons have the edge in the receiving department. You got Julio Jones, Taylor Gabriel, Mohamed Sanu. You have tight end Austin Hooper, who hasn't been explosive, but he was big in key situations for them last year, and he seems to play well. I think he had like 2 touchdowns against the Panthers last year, if I'm not mistaken. And right now with the Panthers, you have Greg Olsen out, and now you have the rookies with Kalen Clay and Curtis Samuel, Kelvin Benjamin gone, Devin Funchess. You have Russell Shepard. I think it's pretty clear, in my opinion, the Falcons have the edge in the receiver department.
Yeah, I think it's one of those situations. I mean, anytime you're talking about Julio Jones, I mean, it's hard to say that they don't have the edge, just because single-handedly he's such a difference maker. Now, when he's out of the lineup, I definitely think there's a major drop-off. I mean, there are a lot of, number 4 and 5 receivers kind of stacked after him. Mohamed Sanu, obviously better than that, but the rest of the guys aren't really game breakers, so to speak, including former ECU receiver Justin Hardy.
Yeah.
But, I definitely think you have to give them the edge there in the passing game. I mean, when you take Greg Olsen and Kelvin Benjamin away, it really, there's not much proven productivity in Carolina's pass catching game. I mean, you're talking about, Christian McCaffrey at running back is your best receiver right now in terms of catches. I think Funchess is definitely a bigger threat. Yeah. But even still, he's not really proven as a number 1, and now he steps into that role. So I definitely give it to Atlanta.
Yeah, no doubt. And, it's funny, you brought up Justin Hardy, and I've noticed he seems to be in and targeted in late game situations on like big third downs for those big catches to move chains. And like you just don't hear much throughout the game, but he's always there making a big key catch on a late drive in the game for Atlanta. Like every time I tune in on Red Zone after the Panthers game and they're playing, if the game's late and they're needing a drive, he's always there making a big catch. I mean, he's never been a big yak guy. He just hasn't had the speed, but his hands, we've all known he's had great hands. So I thought I'm happy he's doing well. I hate he's in Atlanta, obviously, but I wish him the best. Just, if he goes off this week or something, just let us have the W. But
well, just one quick point on that. It seems like Atlanta, for whatever reason, I guess they don't like the fact he doesn't get much separation, which he's never been the fastest blazer since covering him in college. But
right.
To me, in the red zone, like you say, in third down and mediums, they always put him in because I guess he's got such sure hands that the separation doesn't really mean as much. So that's something to look out for, just in terms of in the red zone, they like to use him kind of on the back shoulder throws or the short passes over the middle. But, yeah, I don't think he's ever going to be a number 1 or number 2 receiver, but he's got an interesting skill set for sure. Yeah,
one of the things I always lauded Justin Hardy for was his ability to find the hole in a zone and just sit in it. I mean, he's always been able to find that. And like I said, and that's big on like third down situations when you're trying to move the chains late. If he's running his route, and a quarterback like Matt Ryan, NFL quarterback in general, should be able to recognize a player sitting in the zone, even if it's not in his particular route. That's something Justin Hardy always does. He just kind of holds up in that cushion, gets it, and then he progresses to first down, gets out of bounds, whatever. but he's always been in there. But yeah, we'll move on to running backs. You got hype man Christian McCaffrey, number 8 overall pick, rookie for the Panthers. There's a lot going on with people calling him a bust right now from the running back, and this is probably going to blow up the comments here, and we'll get to those in a minute, guys. But, like we were talking about to open the show, the Panthers have been facing 8, 9-man boxes at times with no safeties because they're daring the Panthers to throw the ball. The wide receivers haven't been a threat deep, and the cornerbacks can cover them one-on-one. So in return, the Panthers haven't been able to run the ball at all. It's been demoralizing, honestly. And on the other side, you have Devontae Freeman and Tevin Coleman, who is a heck of a tandem. And I have to say, right now, I have to give the edge to them. I mean, would you agree there?
Yeah, I think it's another situation where those guys have been more consistent for the past 2 years, more so than a Jonathan Stewart. And then Chris McCaffrey this year just hasn't been able to get any traction in the ground game. So it's been a tough road for him. And just right now, even with the trade and the theories and everything, until Carolina kind of proves that they can really get it done on a game-to-game basis, running the football, or even play-to-play basis, because it's been hit or miss at this point. I think you got to give Atlanta the edge. Devontae Freeman especially, I think he's a real top-notch talent. And then Coleman is just a really underrated player. I mean, he's really underrated. He at times gets more touches than Freeman depending on the situation. So I think Atlanta does get the edge there.
Yeah, there's a lot of edge going to Atlanta on offense, but I mean, it's like we talked about. Panthers haven't done anything really there, and I guess we can jump on the quarterback spot here, and Cam had the 2 big games where he looked, the Panthers offense in general looked back to that explosive form, putting up big points. Both games on the road, New England and Detroit, had everybody going. And then he didn't get any help in the Thursday night game with some, the fumble toss from Jonathan Stewart to the defender. But ultimately lost that and has been downhill ever since, and they still haven't been able to find the run game. But the quarterback position right now, I mean, I think you have to give it to the reigning MVP as well. I mean, I love Cam Newton to death, and I think he's a heck of a talent. But right now, this offense isn't moving. And the Falcons – actually, their offense is ranked, 11th in the league right now. So, and the Panthers are down in 20th. So, I've got to give the edge to Matt Ryan there as well, as much as it pains me to say it.
Yeah, I mean, it's almost I think you have to give the edge to Matt Ryan on paper. But he hasn't looked quite as good as last year for
Definitely
sure.
not. Yeah, no.
And see, with Cam Newton, you just never know, man. It's like every time we're ready to count Cam Newton out, then he comes out and has his best game of the year. So he's such a hit or miss player at this point in his career. It's almost impossible to predict. Any preview, when you kind of talk about Cam Newton, like if you're Colin Cowherd or whatever, ripping Cam Newton, it's one of those situations where he's just an up and down player. He misses some passes at times that are just inexplicable, but then he makes up for it with just an incredible athletic play. So he's just a different quarterback than I think a lot of quarterbacks in this league. He's unorthodox in a lot of ways. It's hard to kind of compare him to another quarterback. So I do think that's, an argument for another day. But if you're going to go just off, if I had to make a choice, I would say Matt Ryan, but I wouldn't be shocked at all if Cam Newton goes out there and has his best game of the year. With so much, every time we kind of say, hey, he's going to be really disappointed after the Benjamin trade. All
adversity.
This, he's going to play bad. And then he goes out and plays well. So you just never know.
Yep, and that's very true. And this is also, he always tries to bring an extra chip on his shoulder against his hometown team. So he actually said something about that in his press conference Wednesday, saying it's, the offseason is never fun for him when he loses to Atlanta, and I can imagine that's pretty true. But, yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, it's, Cam could come out this week and just blow the doors off. You just don't know. But now we're going to flip sides for a minute here, and this is where I think the Panthers neutralize everything I just gave the edge for on Atlanta with the defense, and we'll start with the defensive line and work our way back. Who do you give the defensive line edge to as of right now?
I think you look at the interior, and you start with K'Wan Short, who is just a monster of a player, and I don't know if there's many guys like him in the league. And I think you start with the inside of the line and work outwards. And for sure, you look at Atlanta; they definitely have some good defensive linemen as well. But overall, to me, with Peppers, with Addison, with Latulele, even with a guy like Kyle Love as kind of your backup, I do think Carolina has an edge there. But I do think you got to give Atlanta some props. I mean, you look at their defensive line, a defensive end like Brooks Reed, 3 sacks on the year, has some talent. Dontari Poe, we all know what he can do.
Oh yeah,
at D tackle. So I mean, they're really solid too.
Vic Beasley led the league in sacks last year.
Yeah. So I mean, I think their pass rush is good. I just don't think it's as good as Carolina. So I would give Carolina the edge.
Yeah, I agree. And I got people commenting up here saying Peppers is going to have 4 sacks in that game.
You never know.
Yeah, what is he on pace right now for 17 or something? It's insane. He's doing it up at 37. So right now the Panthers are second in the league in sacks behind Jacksonville. 6 behind them. Jacksonville has 33. Panthers have 27. And then the Falcons all the way down at 15th with 17. So they're not getting – this defense from the Falcons last year they were getting a lot of pressure, and they were forcing turnovers, and they were getting interceptions with their secondary and whatnot. And that was really helping their offense as well when they got hot late in the season. You're not seeing that right now. They've been exposed quite a few times this year already. So we'll go to the linebacking core. And I think this is pretty much an easy one. Yeah, it's not even close, really. It's the Panthers. I don't even know if we really need to put much discussion on that one.
Yeah, 100% Panthers. I mean, Vic Beasley, they list him as a linebacker on their depth chart, even though he's kind of more of an edge rusher.
Yep.
But like you said, he's only got 3 sacks this year after 15.5 last year. He's been injured a little bit, but still, Carolina – I mean, Luke Kuechly, Thomas Davis, Shaq Thompson, it's really a no contest.
Yeah, I completely agree. And then we're going to hit the secondary here. Kurt Coleman's back. We got Mike Adams still at strong safety, James Bradbury, Daryl Worley. This one's really, this one's kind of close for me. And I think like the Panthers have been built around, I think the front 7 helps this. James Bradbury has just been phenomenal, and you haven't heard his name a whole lot, and that's always good when you're a cornerback. He hasn't came around to the ball hawk ability quite yet like Josh Norman had, but he just hasn't been getting targeted a whole lot either. So, but the difference, I think, is you got Robert Alford and Desmond Trufant for the Falcons, and then you got Keanu Neal and who's their strong safety? Do you know off the top of your head?
Keanu Neal is their regular safety, and then Ricardo Allen.
That's right. Yep.
Yeah.
And what's killing me and not giving the edge to the Panthers here is the right side of the secondary. And I don't know, man. I have to give – I don't know. I'd really almost call this one even. I mean, like I said, the Falcons secondary hasn't been playing great, but – Alford, I would say, is a better corner than Daryl Worley right now, wouldn't you?
Yeah, I'm kind of with you. Robert Alford and Desmond Trufant are solid.
Yeah.
And I think Bradbury is definitely at this point, one of the better cover corners in the NFC South, if not the NFC, just with everything he's doing. But like you said, Daryl Worley, the jury is still out. It'll be interesting to me if they try to get Bradbury to shadow Julio at all.
Last week he followed. I noticed a couple of times he followed Mike Evans to the right side of the field, which you don't see Bradbury. He normally stays like Norman did in the majority of games, except big ones against receivers like Julio and Mike Evans. doesn't move. He stays on the left side of the field, and he did follow Mike Evans, so I would expect to see him follow Julio some.
Yeah, I think that's Carolina's best chance at winning.
Yeah.
I mean, I think if Julio is facing Darrell Worley, I think we all kind of saw how that went last year.
Yeah.
At least Zach Sanchez hopefully will not be guarding him this game.
Jesus. Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, overall, man, I think I give the edge to Atlanta, but it's a slight one in the secondary.
Yeah.
I think again, if Bradbury plays well, and if he shadows Julio and you kind of leave Worley on some of the other guys, I think that kind of takes away a little bit of your concern. But just their 4 guys overall, I think, are a little bit better than Carolina's 4.
Yeah, I agree. Like you said, a slight edge, and I feel like what is really the Panthers have been getting to the quarterback these last couple weeks, and that's something. I mean, it's kind of cliche to say because it's every defense's dream is to get to the quarterback constantly, but it really has to keep happening, especially against Matt Ryan and Julio Jones. Josh Drawn up here on Facebook commented saying Julio Jones has to be shut down. And look, that first game you mentioned it, Bradbury went out in like the first quarter with an injury, and Julio Jones went off for like 300 yards. Benet Ben Wickery tried covering them, didn't work, and they were putting these guys in man, and I just, I didn't understand that at all. And then, like you said, Zach Sanchez, and it was he just absolutely destroyed us. The second game of the year, Bradbury was in, and he had 4 catches for 60 yards, and that was it. So I think it kind of tells a story right there, the difference Bradbury brings to this team, and not one that we didn't know, but still worthy of bringing up the point. So like you said, slight edge, but I have to give it to Atlanta. Well, let's see. Let's look at some of these. I had some of these comments rolling in here. Said Pep is going to have a 4-sack day, and we're going to back up a little bit because I missed some people's. Robert Turbert said he would like to see more quick 3-step drops by Cam and hit those slants and McCaffrey out of the backfield, more patience and ball control, 3 to 6 yards at a time. Well, I feel like they've been doing that. I mean, if you look at if you look at the next gen stats, it's all the passes Cam's been throwing have been 1 to 10 yards, and he might have 1 or 2 deep down the field, and they're normally incompletions. I mean, you've seen the same thing, correct?
Yeah, I think I've seen a lot of talk about McCaffrey, and it almost seems like they're kind of just using him more as a check down receiver, more so than running some routes down the field. Yeah. He has run some slants maybe at times, but I don't know. It's been kind of weird to put a finger on. Like they're content with kind of throwing McCaffrey in the flats and short. You would like to kind of see them. They tried that one play in the Philadelphia game where he was open and Cam just kind of missed him and let him out of bounds on the deep throw. Yeah. I think I would like to see a little bit more of that rather than more of the short stuff. But yeah, I've kind of been seeing the same. I mean, at this point, with Kelvin in there, the thought was you had the corners too close to the line of scrimmage. In that case, it's harder to throw slants. So maybe now they can back some guys off by going deep a little bit.
Yeah, and I'm hoping, I was pleased with what I saw from Cameron Artis-Payne last week. And a lot of the talk among, fans and people on Twitter is it seems right now McCaffrey's best suited at receiving. I mean, that was one of the biggest draws for him going, coming out of the draft was his receiving ability. He was probably the best route runner in the draft. And it almost seems like the Panthers should just put him at the receiver role for now and let Stu and Cap try to get some of those, take over the run game. And like Rivera said in the press conference this week, you're X, you're Z, you're going to be our slot guy. Y'all are going to be running backs, and that's all y'all are going to have to worry about. We're not going to keep sitting here trying to flip y'all in positions. We'll use you in different schemes and different motions, but we're not going to sit here and keep flipping you back and forth and confusing the hell out of you as you're, in rookies and whatnot. So I'm with you. I'd kind of like to see more of that. I mean, I get they're trying to get him in space, but right now I think the speed of the NFL is he hasn't quite caught up to it yet. I mean, you saw it last week on his first carry in Tampa on that it was almost an end around where they handed the ball off, and he went to cut inside, and he had the guy beat to the edge, and he got tackled after a 3-4 yard gain. I mean, that's just stuff he can't do, and I'm with you. I think he should just I feel like they should just use him more on the deep routes and get him involved with, a bigger route tree where he can use his shiftiness to break loose in open field. So.
Yeah. No, I'm the same way.
Let's see. Mike Strib, we beat the Patriots and the Bills. They both beat the Falcons, so we should win this game. Well,
A plus C does not always equal D, or whatever, however the saying goes.
Yeah, that's totally true. And I mean, I'm with you. If that's the case, then we should have beat the Bears. We're the only team in the NFC South to lose to the Bears. So, and we got our butts stomped. And just flat out honesty.
Yeah, it's one of those situations in the NFL. Teams match up so differently, and it's a week-to-week league. I mean, everybody's talented. If somebody has an off day, you just never really know. So I honestly think these two teams are pretty evenly matched. I don't think Atlanta's some superpower that the Panthers can't beat.
Right.
Even dating back to last year's success. But I think this is a game that really could go either way.
Yeah, and like we said to open the show, it's a big one, and it's really a big one for both because right now New Orleans is hot. That defense is getting it together. The offense has still got Drew Brees, so and obviously they have Ted Ginn, and a lot of people are, I still see a lot of people giving Ted Ginn grief, and the dude's on pace for like 1,000 yards right now, and I don't, I think a lot of people underestimated that move this offseason, and it's clearly showing now. Hopefully, this injection of speed the Panthers are hoping for, we see it some on Sunday and it pans out. I don't do predictions anymore because they just don't ever work out for me, and I just hate them. So, but I'll ask you if you have a prediction for this game this week, and if you have a score prediction, you're welcome to throw it out there. If you don't, I completely understand. Like I said, I don't like doing it. So, do you have one?
Yeah, I'm kind of the same way. I'm not a big prediction guy because I think it's pretty pointless in the grand scheme of things. But just because I'm a guest on your show, I'll kind of make one up on the cuff just to bring the listeners some excitement. I do think Carolina wins this game. I think this is even with all the Kelvin Benjamin stuff going on, I just think it's a statement game. If Carolina wants to be taken seriously in terms of being a playoff team, you have the NFC South and NFC defending champions at home. You want to be known as a playoff contender once again. You have to go out and play well in this game because later this year you got to go back to New Orleans, you got to go back to Atlanta, and those are two always tough road trips. So I think this is a game that they're going to feel the pressure that they need to win, and I think they will win. I think they just have a better defense right now than Atlanta. And I think they'll find a way. I think Cam Newton will find a way to carry the team to a victory on Sunday.
Yeah, and I think this being the first game between the two and it being at home and this situation they're in right now, I think is pretty key. And I'm with you. And right now, this defense has played good all year, but these last couple of weeks, man, they have just looked better. They got Luke back last week, and getting him back in any defense is always going to be a huge boost. But it just looks really good right now and really strong. I don't even think they've given up a touchdown the last 2 weeks. So that's pretty big in itself.
Yep.
But I'm with you, and I mentioned this. I think it was earlier this week on Twitter. The Panthers have this week at home against Atlanta. Next week at home on Monday Night Football against Miami. Then they have the bye week, and then they go on the road to take on the Jets. And that week, they could potentially get Greg Olsen back. They have a huge opportunity here to be 7-3 going into the bye and get Greg Olsen back coming out to go take on the Jets in New Jersey. And that's a huge opportunity. And you'd hate to see them, throw that to the wayside on a couple of mistakes because really they beat themselves even with the offense not playing great. They've beaten themselves with bad plays and turnovers, and it puts them in a bind late in the games. So, but I think they turn it around this week as well.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think it's a very good opportunity here to, you look at it, you win these next two, you're 7-3 in the bye. You get Greg Olsen back at New York. That should be a win. All of a sudden, you're 8-3 with a lot of home games down the stretch. So, yeah, we have to take it one game at a time. but at the same time, you win this game, and I really think you're sitting pretty if you're the Panthers.
Michael Turbett put his prediction in the comments, and his prediction is 28-3 Panthers.
Nice troll job.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What a classic.
That would be something else, man.
Yeah, that would
if that legitimately happened.
Yeah, oh man, I would. The Roaring Riot's going to be out. This is like they're using this as their homecoming game, and they're going all out, and they've got a whole section in the midfield upper deck, and they've got rally tiles. I don't know if you've seen it or not, with the scoreboard from the third quarter of the Super Bowl with 28-3 for Falcons. So they're going to be trolling real hard. But
that's rough. Poor Falcons.
And actually, I just got a late question here. Chandre Williams commented asking, "I'm sorry I'm late, but do you think Burson will play?" And I do not. I think people are freaking out about this addition. Personally, it's a depth move. He's not coming in to take over Kelvin Benjamin's role, guys. Don't fall for that, please. If that happens, then I will seriously start to be concerned with this coaching staff.
Yeah, I mean, it's a situation where he's taken Kelvin Benjamin's spot on the roster, but he's not filling Kelvin Benjamin's role. So I mean, it's a purely depth move. They talked about Damiere Byrd potentially coming back in week 13 from IR if he ends up being able to recover, and they make him the second choice to come off IR along with Greg Olsen. I think at that point, Brenton Burson's likely to lose his roster spot.
Yeah.
So I don't think this is, it's just the same Brenton Burson we've seen for the past 3 or 4 years. He's going to be that fifth receiver. Maybe he's active on game day, but I would think, probably not this week. And even if he is active, I don't really see him playing. I don't know what he really brings to the table, unless somebody like Russell Shepard gets hurt. Then maybe he's more likely to play. But he's not going to stretch the field I would rather see Kalen Clay play.
Absolutely.
Over Burson.
Yeah, no doubt there. And that's a good point about Damiere Byrd coming back. That's a really good point there, and possibly knocking him right back out. So, but Sean Gilly said, "Thank God Goldilocks is not playing." Y'all are so harsh on that kid.
Man, he gets a lot of hate from Panthers fans.
He does, all because of one dropped punt that he never should have been in that position due to injuries for. Other than that, though, he's had pretty good hands. I mean, he's not a great receiver, but he's been a solid possession guy here and there for Panthers. So.
Yeah, I just, and at times I admit I kind of play it up on the Panthers 24/7 Facebook page, just the amount of hate he gets. But, you got to respect the dude. He finds a way to stick around on the NFL roster. Yeah. Despite not having as much talent as probably some of the guys around him. So, I give him credit. I mean, he's made a living for the past 5-6 years now, just being on and off the Panthers roster.
Yeah.
So good for him.
Yeah, no doubt. I'm not going to hate on any guy doing that. I wish I could do it. I would gladly take his position right now in the NFL. Anyway, well, guys, we're going to get out of here. Igoe, thanks again for joining us. I'm gonna try to get up here and get back to these weekly previews, guys, and get other people up here too. If I can get Igoe each week, I'll get him. If not, I'll try to get Josh Klein from the Riot Report or whatnot. Everybody's busy. Football is wide open right now. So, but I appreciate y'all tuning in. Be sure to like, comment, share, do all that stuff. Subscribe to us on YouTube. Follow us at Panthers Horse on Twitter. And I've tagged Carolina Panthers on 24/7 Sports where, Igoe does all his stuff. Up here in the post. Be sure to go like that and follow them for all updates and news on Panthers. He's got it all covered. Is there anywhere else they can follow you on? Where do they follow you on Twitter and stuff, Igoe? Yeah,
you can follow the personal accounts at Stephen Igoe, Stephen with a PH, last name Igoe, all together. And then we have a Panthers 24/7 account too that I try to update more than I do. Which you can follow that too. I don't know the exact handle off the top of my head because I'm not as familiar with it as I need to be. But yeah, you can find us on Twitter as well. You can go to the Panthers 24/7 site and it's the link there as well. So, but yeah, man, I appreciate you having me on. Fun stuff. Yeah, man, thanks for coming, and we'll see y'all Sunday. Y'all tune in Sunday after the Panthers game right here. We'll probably be live around 7 for the post game show. We'll be taking your calls, getting your thoughts. Igoe's kind of familiar with this platform with Fifth Quarter over on Pirate Radio. But we'll be taking your calls and getting y'all's takes and whatnot from the game. Hopefully a big win for the Panthers Sunday in Charlotte. We'll catch y'all next time. See you.